for the labor. We're thinking about 4 ounces at the end of the season. You don't need to pay it now, but at the end of the season.
That is not going to be an issue. If the production goes up and we can get the gold, we can make it work.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can.
We have to.
Yeah.
How do you save a dying dream? For miners Levi and Corey, hope was running thin. Their claim on a secluded island barely produced enough gold to cover fuel costs. But when Freddy and Juan arrived, they brought a wild proposal. For a fee of 4 ounces of gold, they would install a system so efficient it could increase production by an almost unbelievable 50 times. The Island of Lost Dreams. The island was a place dreams came to die. Tucked away off the coast of Washington State, the locals called it the Isle of Echoes, because the only things that ever seemed to last were the stories of failure. For generations, prospectors had been lured in by rumors of thick gold veins, only to be broken by the island's cruel tricks. Unpredictable magnetic fields often played havoc with modern electronics, and the weather could turn from sunshine to a furious gale in minutes. The ground itself seemed resistant, holding its treasures with a stubborn grip. Levi and Corey's mine was the latest venture teetering on the edge of this familiar abyss.
Here's one of our seismic sensors. So these are a passive seismic instrument. So yeah, it's not intrusive.
Yeah, perfect.
All we gotta do is plant these into the ground and then wait 20 minutes, go on to the next one. Set that one up, wait 20 minutes, and go ahead.
Yeah.
Their process was backbreaking and heartbreakingly slow. They would chip away at the gold-bearing quartz vein deep inside the mountain on level 3. Then they had to haul every single bucket of ore down a treacherous, winding path to their processing plant on level 2. The road was a nightmare, slick with mud and prone to rock slides. After all that work, their homemade system was so inefficient, they were losing most of the fine gold. They were processing maybe 150 pounds of material on a good day, and the gold they recovered was barely a sprinkle of dust in the bottom of a pan. Truth be told, they were just days away from giving up. Another pair of dreamers about to be swallowed by the island's legend. Their hope was fading as fast as the daylight in the island's deep, shadowed valleys.
Watching you guys feed it at the end there, I'm like, I really think we can put more through that hammer mill. 0.07, you might be able to get that in an hour.
Exactly.
Right?
The whole operation was bleeding money and spirit, and as the season wore on, the pressure mounted with each passing, fruitless day. They knew that without a miracle, their claim would become just one more abandoned scar on the landscape, a silent testament to the island's unforgiving nature. What they didn't know was that their last desperate call for help was about to be answered, but the solution would force them to take the biggest risk of their lives. When Freddy and Juan stepped onto the claim, they could feel the heavy air of desperation. It was a familiar feeling, but the challenges here were unique. They saw the dangerous road, the inefficient mill, and the tiny amount of gold that represented weeks of hard labor. After a long look at the struggling operation, they came back to Levi and Corey with a plan that was nothing short of revolutionary. It was a 3-pronged attack designed to completely change the game. First, they proposed a simple yet brilliant solution to the transportation problem.
Put a sluice box in place of the table, and then out of the end, it goes into a catch bin, pump that material up to the top of the spiral, cut the heavies out of the spiral.
Forget the risky road. They would install a 180-foot-long 4-inch pipe that would run straight down the mountainside, sending ore from the crusher on level 3 directly to the mill below. This would streamline the whole process instantly. Next, Juan would craft a brand new, custom-built sluice box designed to be far more effective at catching the free gold that was currently washing away. This alone would make a huge difference. But the final piece of the plan was the real game changer. To get the high volume they needed, Freddy explained that they would bring in a specialist. This expert in high-energy fragmentation would teach them how to use a controlled rock-breaking system to get ore out of the vein far faster than their small rototool ever could. To complete the system, they would add a spiral concentrator, a vintage piece of equipment that would process the remaining material and pull out every last flake of gold. The price for this transformation was steep for a failing mine. It would cost around $7,000 in materials, and for their labor, Freddy and Juan wanted 4 ounces of gold at the end of the season. It was a massive gamble, but for a 50-fold increase in gold, it was a risk Levi and Corey knew they had to take.
This pipe's packed up with stuff. I've been beating on it with a hammer to no avail. We'll give it a colonoscopy and a throat check here and try to get all it.
This wasn't just about making the mine profitable. It was about conquering the island's curse once and for all. Their entire future was riding on this one radical, high-stakes plan. Yet as the miners agreed to the terms, a strange, low hum seemed to emanate from the very rock around them, a sound no one had ever heard before. With the deal sealed, Juan set off on a crucial mission. Part of their plan relied on a piece of technology that was almost a relic, something most modern miners had never even seen. 20 miles from the claim, back on the mainland in Washington state, Juan followed a lead for a Humphreys spiral concentrator. Invented by a man named Ira B. Humphreys way back in 1943, these spirals were everywhere on wash plants in the 40s and 50s. You see, the device is a marvel of simplicity. It uses nothing but gravity and water to do its job. Pay dirt mixed with water gets pumped to the top of a giant corkscrew-like chute. As the slurry swirls its way down, a simple law of physics takes over. The spinning motion pushes the lighter sand and waste material to the outer edge of the spiral, while the much heavier gold clings to the inside track. Along this inner track are small ports that catch the gold and siphon it away for collection. Freddy and Juan were betting on this 80-year-old design because of the island's notorious electronic interference. While newer, complex machines might fail, this purely mechanical system was immune. It was a piece of history they hoped to bring back to life. Truth be told, they had never used one before, but they believed it was the secret weapon they needed to dramatically increase the mine's throughput. Without processing more material, Levi and Corey would never make it. Juan finally found them, 3 of the ancient cast iron spirals standing together like monuments to a bygone era of mining. They were heavy, coated in decades of grime, but Juan saw their potential. He knew that beneath the rust and dirt was a machine that had likely collected a fortune in gold over its long life. He chose the best one of the bunch, a perfect piece of history that was about to get a second chance. He had no idea, however, that the spiral was hiding a deep flaw that could sabotage their entire project before it even began.
Big difference was, before you guys ran 150 pounds, maybe not even that.
This time we ran probably 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Yep.
Honestly, watching it run, I think we can actually turn that up a little more.
I think so too.
Getting the 80-year-old spiral back to the claim was an adventure in itself. The cast iron beast was incredibly heavy, and the team had to carefully strap the antique piece down to make sure they didn't lose it on the bumpy ride. It was more than just equipment. It was a piece of history being put back into play. Once at their headquarters, the real work began. To make the spiral stable, they built a wider wooden base for it, extending its footprint to keep it steady when the slurry started flowing. Then came the cleanup. 80 years of sitting idle had left it caked with dirt and grime. Freddy and his partner Alex got to work on the refurbishment. They needed the spiral chute to be as smooth as possible for it to work correctly, so they began the tedious process of cleaning and planning to recoat the surface. As they worked, they uncovered a surprising fact. According to an old industry manual Alex found, nearly 9,400 of these spirals were made, and the manual claimed most were still in use. Freddy scoffed, knowing that was highly unlikely in today's world of high-tech processors. You can't believe everything you read. But as he turned his attention to the pipes that divert the gold, he hit a major snag. The main collection pipe was completely packed with old, hardened debris. Freddy grabbed a heavy mallet and started beating on the pipe, but the blockage wouldn't budge. It was packed solid. They needed to see what was going on inside, so they prepared for a deep, internal inspection of the pipe. Time was ticking away, and this unexpected problem was a huge setback. They had to get it cleared, and they had to do it fast. The success of the entire operation now hinged on clearing this single stubborn pipe, but the blockage was far worse than they could have ever imagined. Trial by thermal force. The internal inspection revealed a disaster. It wasn't just dirt and gravel clogging the pipe. The problem was the pipe itself. Decades ago, it had been lined with rubber to protect it from wear, but over 80 years, that rubber lining had decayed and collapsed inward, creating a dense, impenetrable plug. There was no way to drill it or force it out. With their deadline looming, Freddy knew they were out of time for a delicate solution. He had to do something drastic. He decided he was going to try and thermally clear the blockage out of there. It was a massive risk. He grabbed his oxyacetylene torch, a special tool that could generate incredible temperatures. He was about to apply heat reaching over 5,700 degrees Fahrenheit to the antique cast iron pipe. One mistake, 1 second too long, and he could melt or crack the irreplaceable 80-year-old metal, destroying the spiral and their entire plan along with it. The team watched with bated breath as Freddy fired up the torch. The roar filled the workshop as the intense, white-hot flame met the ancient metal. He carefully heated the outside of the pipe, hoping to incinerate the rubber inside without damaging the iron.
I haven't seen one speck of gold in it yet, which is a darn good sign. That means that sluice is working great.
After a few tense moments, he shut off the torch and grabbed a heavy striking tool. He gave the pipe a few sharp taps. At first, nothing. Then he hit it again, harder. A puff of black smoke shot out of the end, followed by a chunk of charred, melted rubber. Holy cow, it was working. He hit it a few more times, and a cascade of burnt debris poured out onto the floor. When they looked through the pipe, it was finally clean. It was a messy, risky fix that worked better than they ever anticipated. They had dodged a huge bullet, but now came the real test, putting all the pieces together and seeing if this collection of new and ancient parts would actually find them more gold. The moment of truth had arrived. With the refurbished spiral and the new pipe system fully installed, it was time to see if their wild plan would work. At the top of the mountain, Levi and Corey started feeding material into the jaw crusher. The crushed ore flowed into a chute, where two powerful vibrators shook it down into the new 180-foot pipe. Down at level 2, the slurry of rock and water shot out the end of the pipe and onto the new sluice box. Everything was running perfectly. The feed rate was incredible, a constant, steady flow of material that was more than they used to process in an entire day.
The spiral's actually working really well. Freddy's actually been panning it as we've been running. He hasn't seen one color in this yet.
As the system ran, Juan kept a close eye on the spiral concentrator. The slurry swirled down the iron chute, a mesmerizing black vortex. The design was working just as intended. The heavier material, hopefully containing gold, was sticking to the inside track. Meanwhile, Freddy was taking samples from the very end of the process, panning the tailings to see what, if anything, was being lost. After his third pan, he looked up with a huge grin. He hadn't seen a single speck of gold. This was a fantastic sign. It meant the new sluice and the 80-year-old spiral were working in perfect harmony, catching all the gold before it could escape. The system was a roaring success. The sluice was catching the vast majority of the bigger pieces, and the spiral was grabbing the fine gold that followed. Every part of their radical plan was working flawlessly. The amount of material they were moving was staggering compared to before. They had gone from painstakingly hauling a few buckets down a treacherous path to sending a river of ore straight to a highly efficient recovery plant. For the first time in a long time on the Isle of Echoes, the air wasn't filled with desperation, but with the thrilling hum of progress and the promise of a massive payday. But the true measure of their success would only be revealed when they did their first cleanup. After running the new system for just a short while, it was time for the first cleanup. The difference was stunning. Before, a cleanup meant finding a few tiny, lonely specks of gold in the pan. Now, when Juan tilted the pan, there was a thick, heavy streak of beautiful yellow gold at the bottom.
Well, what we came up with, as far as costs go, we're thinking it's going to be around $7,000 in materials.
It was a weighable amount, something they hadn't seen from a single run before. The sheer volume of material they processed was the key. Levi and Corey used to struggle to run 150 pounds of ore. In the short test run, they had already processed over 500 pounds, and Juan was convinced they could push it even harder, maybe even double that amount. They carefully collected the gold and placed it on the scale for the moment of truth. The numbers climbed, 0.02 ounces, 0.05. It settled at 0.07 ounces. To an outsider, it might not sound like a fortune, but for Levi and Corey, it was everything. That 0.07 ounces, worth about $160, was roughly 50 times the amount of gold they had recovered in their previous runs. It was absolute proof that the system worked. Freddy and Juan did the math. If they ran the plant for a standard 6-day week, that result would equate to 1.68 ounces of gold, worth a staggering $3,864. They rescued the mine and created a fortune, But was it right to use such aggressive methods on the historic island? Like and subscribe to find out what happens next.